I'd like to ask the town clerk if she will to call the roll at this time.
Mayor Marshburn,
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vance,
Here.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
Councilmember Singleton,
Here.
Councilmember Dellinger,
Here.
and Councilmember Behringer. Here.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you, council, for being present tonight while we conduct this meeting. I'm going to recognize Councilmember Singleton at this time, who will offer or have someone offer the invocation and, the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand if you can, and then the invocation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Would like to join me in prayer? Please do. Our Father, today, thank you for allowing us to come together and meet and talk about important issues in our community. Father, we lift up those who are struggling with many issues, those who are battling illnesses, diseases, that you be with them and their families and try to help heal them and heal their bodies. Be with those who have lost loved ones. Wrap your arms around those families also. Especially, Father, we ask that you be with those men and women who are in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, representing our country around the world. Be with these men and women and be with their families as they try to protect us and protect the bases and installations in which they serve. Lift these things up in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thanks so much, Mr. Singleton, sure enough. So moving right along, Ms. Clerk, do we have anyone sign up for petitions, comments tonight?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, as you may know, this is the time of our agenda when we first begin, where we offer our citizens an opportunity to come and make comments or petitions to the council. And usually we ask you to sign up in advance, but we don't necessarily exclude you if you don't. So I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience at this time who came for that purpose and desires to be recognized. Or is there anyone? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we will move along, sure enough. So the next item, council, on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. You have that before you. Motion would be in order.
I'd like to add an item, if we could, under new and old business. It's based on some emails we had today in regards to discussion of a currently scheduled public hearing for August 22nd. For the council to have discussion whether or not we want to have it on August 22nd or to move that to another date based off Attorney Jones's comments
Okay, sure.
under new and old business.
All right. Very good. Council, you've heard the Singleton to amend the agenda to that effect. What say you? I need a second, I guess.
Second.
Okay, motion properly made and seconded. If you favor the motion to make this change to the agenda, would you vote aye?
Aye.
And if there's any opposition, no, and there is none. All right. Thank you very much for that. Now it's my privilege and honor to go to this section of our agenda, but what we call presentations. And in order to do this most effectively, I'm going to come down off the dais and come right over there and call forth our special guest. Some of you who were here early in the year for a meeting will recall that in this chamber, we had the privilege of recognizing, see if I say it correctly, I think it was the North Carolina Teacher of the Year. Wake County, excuse me, okay, all right. I was expanding it a little too much, I guess, but okay. But anyway, it certainly was a privilege, and I'm so proud for the school and certainly proud for the town of Garner to recognize that gentleman. And this evening, equally so, we're proud and pleased to recognize Dr. Stephanie Nelson, and I'm going to ask her to come forward at this time if she will. If you want to bring the little one with you, you could, but okay. No. All right. Yeah, we'll just come and stand beside me over here. So it's a privilege to meet you, and congratulations to you. I have a proclamation that I want to read and then we'll recognize you and also your principal. So Dr. Nelson has been a dedicated and highly respected school counselor at Garner Magnet High School since 2007. And whereas Dr. Nelson is a leader in her school and in the school counseling profession, and whereas Dr. Nelson, in the words of her administration, has put into action the latest techniques in school counseling, and these have resulted in maximizing the academic achievement of students. And whereas Dr. Nelson is leading Garner Magnet in an effort to implement and sustain data-driven comprehensive counseling programs, and whereas Dr. Nelson is a nationally certified counselor, a national board certified teacher in school counseling, and has earned a PhD from NC State. Expecting Gray to say go Pack, but at any rate, we will dispense with that. And whereas Dr. Nelson is widely known for her enthusiasm and for being a tireless worker who leads by example. Now, therefore, I, Ken Marshburn, Mayor of the Town of Garner, do hereby proclaim August 8, 2023 as a day to celebrate Dr. Stephanie Nelson for being named the 2023 Wake County Public School System Counselor of the Year. And I urge residents, businesses, and civic organizations to avail themselves of every opportunity possible to support our schools throughout the Garner area. And Dr. Nelson, I proudly give you this proclamation this evening and invite you to say any words you'd like to.
Thank you
at
so
this time.
much.
Sure.
I guess the words I'll say is just that it's always my goal to serve students and families in Garner to the best of my ability, and it's a privilege to be able to do that, and this is a lot, so thanks for having me.
Great, okay. Thank you. And I'm going to ask your principal this time, if he will, to come up and share any words he'd like to share with us this time.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Marshburn. Thank you, Council. I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to be back up here so soon, recognizing yet another of our members, but it's it's an embarrassment of riches. And Dr. Nelson is just a prime example of all the great things that we've got going on at Garner High School. I could not be more proud of the staff, faculty. Dr. Nelson truly emulates what you want in a servant leader that works for kids. I got in there, as you guys know, a little over a year ago, and I put a lot of pressure on the student services, the counselors, want this, want this, want this. Dr. Nelson answered the bell every single time. And not only did she answer the bell, but she served as a leader among that group, kind of keeping everybody to answer the bell. So all we've seen is wonderful results from that, and could not be more deserving. So congratulations, Dr. Nelson, and thank you guys again for recognizing her and Garner High School. Thank you.
So, as part of this celebration, I'm going to invite our council members, if they want to offer any congratulatory words to Ms. Nelson while we still have her here. So why don't we start down on that end, maybe with Mr. Vance, and we'll come down the line.
Well, Dr. Nelson, congratulations to you. Thank you for all your hard work, and this is a worthy award, and I know that the students appreciate your hard work and making Garner look good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the work you do for the students. It's really the intangible part of the academic experience, and kids are under so many different pressures that we weren't under, and so it's great we have somebody dedicated to help guide them through that. So congratulations.
Doctor, I will say that having been the mother of 5 boys, it takes a special person to be a guidance counselor in a high school. Thank you for making that sacrifice, and you actually look like you enjoy it. So we appreciate you, and let us encourage you the best way we can.
That educators nowadays face many, many challenges, and it seems to get more challenging every year. So I tip my hat to you for your, I think you said since 2007, so 16 years in Garner. That's wonderful. I graduated from Garner many years ago. My 3 kids all graduated from Garner, so proud of the work that you do in representing not only the Garner High School, but also the town of Garner. Garner Magnet High School, let me get that clear. Say Garner Magnet. When I was there, it was just Garner Senior High, but Garner Magnet High School. Thank you for your work.
Congratulations again, and for a job well done, obviously, and being recognized for this high honor. And it seems like here of late, Mr. Mayor, all the award winners are coming from the Garner High School area. So apparently this is, the sign says, a great place to be. So congratulations, and we hope you hang around a long time.
Good, yeah. And so thank you for helping make it a great place to be. So if all of you want to be slightly at ease for just a minute, I believe we need to take a photo here while Dr. Nelson's here with us, and anybody else who wants to join us. So just give us a few minutes to do that. I think we'll probably take it on out.
Mr. Mayor, you may have Dr. Nelson introduce her family. Great. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you all for the opportunity to do that recognition this evening. It's always a special time, sure enough. So, Council, we are now down to the consent agenda. There are several items on there, and I know that one council member desires to pull one of the items, primarily for the purpose of just sort of highlighting it a little bit more. It probably won't be a long discussion item, but I recognize Mr. Vance, who can indicate which item he's wanting to remove from the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item I'd like to pull is item number 3, Budget Amendment, Affordable Housing Workshop.
Okay, so council, with that change, you've heard that change, and we'll deal with that right after the vote probably, but if you're in favor of approving the agenda with this change, would you vote aye?
Aye.
Aye.
If there's any opposition, no, and it's so ordered. Okay, so thank you for approving the consent agenda, and I believe by sort of a mutual agreement, at this point, I'm going to recognize Councilmember Vance, who will make comments as it relates to the item that was pulled.
Thank you, sir. The purpose of having it pulled was to highlight it for the public interest. There have been a number of conversations in reference to affordable housing and also workforce housing, which is synonymous with affordable housing, and what does that mean for the town of Garner. A number of residents have been talking and asking questions about that, and I just wanted to pull it from the consent agenda for that those who may not read the consent agenda or see the agenda will know it from this public meeting that the town is moving forward with having a workshop in the area of affordable housing in the near future in September, in which we will be discussing strategies as to how to move forward and hopefully strategies as to how we can be more receptive to affordable housing in our development projects.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Vance, and I certainly concur with your sentiments here and your statements. So, Council, I believe the next item of business is to go to our first public hearing, which is on the agenda, item H. Well, let me see. We did. I'm sorry. Yep, you're exactly right. So, I need a motion at this time.
So moved.
Okay. Motion probably made and seconded. All in favor? Would you vote aye?
Aye.
Okay, it's approved, and so thank you much. Now we'll go to the public hearing item on our agenda. There's just the one hearing. historic landmark designation for the Garner Women's Club. And the presenter here is, well, I'll recognize Mr. Cheesenberg first, who will recognize, I guess, our presenter.
Yes, we had a same-day change here in who's presenting due to conflicts with other meetings. So I am here to introduce you to Mr. Gary Roth, who is the President and CEO of Capital Area Preservation. Just as a reminder, Garner is one of most communities in Wake County that participates in a county-wide historic preservation program. And there is a county-appointed Historic Preservation Commission, so people that are appointed just like our planning board to serve as an advisory body. CAP specifically, while it's a county-run program and the county planning department does provide assistance, but they also do contract with CAP for additional expertise, advice, and assistance. So Mr. Roth is here to give you the presentation on the proposed landmark designation for the Garner Women's Club.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us out tonight. I bring you greetings from the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission. They are very happy with the partnership they have with the town of Garner, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to represent them. As Jeff said, I am the president of Capital Area Preservation, but I am here on behalf of the Wake County Preservation Commission. There's a lot to discuss tonight. I do want to, just as a preface, call to your attention that there are, if you should approve this proposal from the Wake County Preservation Commission, this would be Garner's 5th historic landmark. The old Garner High School is a designated landmark. The Banks House is another. The Henry Bryan Store and the Wayland Pool House are also Garner historic landmarks. And those last two were both designated in 2005. So it's been a little while. So, let me say that there's a lot to discuss when you're talking about the Garner's Women's Club, both in the building, but also the entity, which has been a contributing and distinguished contributor, I should say, to the Garner community since it was founded way back in 1928. So there is a long and distinguished history, and I will try to do justice to it. I'm not sure that in an abbreviated way, that I can really do that, but I will try my best. The Women's Club is located, the building is located on Highway 70, and to get the right notes up, it stands on the northeast side of Highway 70, about a quarter of a mile due south of the west end of the Garner Historic District. So that gives you some idea of where it is located if you don't know or haven't been there. And this is a closer view of its location near the Historic District. The Garner Women's Club occupies a polygonal 1.33 acre parcel that backs up to the south edge of the Garner Baseball Park and fronts on US Highway 70, as I said, just east of Benson Road. The clubhouse stands on the east side of its parcel, just to the west of a gravel drive that enters at the southeast corner and extends to the gravel parking lot behind the building. The building stands in a clearing among mature trees that thickly line the west and north parcel lines. The building has the appearance of a modest mid-20th century ranch house, and the clearing includes a front lawn dotted with a grouping of pines southwest of the building and a large deciduous tree shading the driveway to the east. So, some historical background. Following the lead of other middle-class women in other North Carolina towns, several Garner women gathered in the home of Maggie Rand on April 21st, 1928, and organized a women's civic and social club. The women met without a clubhouse at first, rotating hosting duties in their own homes. Women's clubs in the United States date to at least 1868, and with the establishment of the Cirrhosis Club of New York. By 1890, women from 61 different clubs established the General Federation of Women's Clubs. The Garner Women's Club affiliated with the in the North Carolina Federation in 1928, just after forming, and with the General in 1938. The General had early on determined that the promotion of education, in particularly libraries, and awarding scholarship to girls and women was central to the work of women's clubs. Women's clubs were a way for women to engage in civic activity without being overtly political. These clubs focused on social problems and needs of the disadvantaged, especially women and children. From its start, the Garner Women's Club had a goal of establishing a local lending library. In 1931, the club managed to open a library on Railroad Street with books borrowed from the Olivia Rainey Library in Raleigh and a librarian, Ella Dupree, paid by the Works Progress Administration. Also in 1931, the club purchased a building on Garner's, quote-unquote, Garner's Main Street, according to the News and Observer. That was the, quote, the pride and joy of the members. The May 1932 meeting was the first identified instance of a Garner Women's Club meeting being held in the club rooms rather than a private home. These club rooms were also used in 1932 by the Garner Junior Women's Club, apparently an offshoot of the Garner Women's Club. The Junior Club appeared to have been for single women in this period, and members took turns hosting each meeting. Both clubs operated by dedicated committee work, including library welfare programs, fundraising, social, and membership. The work of the library committees of the Garner's Women's Club and Junior Women's Club continued with intermittent efforts to run a library through the 1940s and 1950s, according to a historian of the Wake County Public Library System. In 1940, the club authorized the purchase of what would be their second clubhouse on Railroad Street and also intended it to house a library. This got it, I think if I say the date that they first met there, it will resonate with you. Close to another important date. On December 9th, 1941 was the date that they first met there. Close to a date that will live in infamy. By mid-century, the club was again ready for a new clubhouse, in part to rehouse a library. In the early 1950s, the Garner Women's Club hosted the Olivia Rainey Library bookmobile when it came to town, perhaps an indication that the building on Railroad Street was no longer in use as a local library. In 1955, the club sold that building and briefly considered building in the New Forest Hills residential subdivision south of the commercial district, but restrictive covenants there prohibited non-residential uses. As an alternative location was identified on Highway 7, which brings us to our current building, and in July 1956, the club purchased 1.33 acres of land owned by Edna Taylor Michener and R.K. Michener, adjacent to W.E. Sisson's service station. After years of making and selling food at events and bake sales, they paid off the $12,000 mortgage. Imagine that, $12,000 mortgage, in 1964. The library room in the clubhouse was mainly a project of the Junior Women's Club, due in large part to the fact that many of the members had young children and great personal interest in a library. Other local groups contributed to the effort, including shelves donated by the American Legion, books donated by the Alice Broughton Book Club and local residents, and help from the school librarian cleaning and cataloging books. Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts also volunteered time and helped prepare the space. The Junior Women's Club staffed the room and opened the library on Thursdays. The Garner Women's Club once again opened a public library in November 1968, this time at 106 East Main Street in the old Town Hall building. In 1975, the library was moved and in 1982 became part of the Wake County system. So I think, reading between the lines, you can see that without the efforts of the Women's Club, there really would have been no initial Garner library. So until it joined the county system, it was kind of all on them. Current club activities include visiting incarcerated people at the women's prison in Raleigh, school supplies and Christmas gift drives, and working with the Senior Center and Assistance for Violence Against Women. The club also sponsors community projects in partnership with other groups. The Garner's Women Club continues to meet regularly in the clubhouse. The Garner's Women Club has a long history of engagement with other civic groups and connections ranging from celebrations to cooperative charitable events, to aiding in organization, providing food for other civic organizations' banquets, planting shrubs and trees along public streets in the commercial district, and helping to establish the Garner District Educational and Recreational Foundation, which helped create athletic opportunities and facilities for Garner children. So here we are in the building that they designed and built, and the Garner Women's Club is a single-story, side-gabled, brick-veneered building with a symmetrical three-bay facade. A front gable porch on wrought iron columns shelters the centered front entrance. The front-facing gable of the porch roof is supported by wrought iron porch columns. A handrail edges the front of the concrete floored porch and flanks the brick steps leading up from the grade. The rail and columns are painted white. Paired 2/2 horizontal sash flank the entry, and the building's brick veneer is laid in running bond. The eaves of the main roof overhang slightly with a boxed eave that merges into the porch ceiling. The rear elevation has a door flanked by 2/2 sash windows in the east end of the building and a single taller 2/2 sash window in the west end. 2 brick steps with a black painted wrought iron rail at the west end lead up to the single leaf replacement door. An aluminum storm door protects this door as at the front and side entrances. All windows in the building have aluminum storms. A circular emblem of the General Federation of Women's Clubs hangs at both facades in the rear and in the front. The east and west elevations have flush gable ends with vents in the upper peak of the gable, but the fenestration differs a bit from side to side. Notably, the west side has an exterior brick chimney flanked by single 2/2 horizontal sash windows. The east side has the windows in the same position, but no chimney between. On the east side, 2 smaller 2/2 windows light the back half of the building. On the west side, there is an exterior door in the same position. A wood ramp post-dating the house, original construction, has been built to provide an accessible entrance. The floor plan reveals that the building is not a dwelling. One of the things that many people think, and when they drive by, is that this is a modest 1950s ranch house, and it very much looks like that. But this is not a dwelling, as there is one large room spanning the entire front of the building, with one additional small room at the northwest corner, a kitchen at the center back, and restrooms and storage space in the northeast corner. The interior architecture is simple, with consistent finishes in the few rooms. The clubhouse features 3 main rooms: a meeting room that occupied the front of the building, a room in the back left corner with separate entrance to house that town and library, and a kitchen, smaller spaces including washrooms, a coat room, and storage, finishes including a knotty pine paneling in the main room and the library, and knotty pine cabinetry along one side of the wide galley kitchen. The opposite side had metal cabinets and a deep sink. This is a view of the former library room that was used when the building first opened. This was the town library, in essence, thanks to the Women's Club. This is the kitchen area with all original 1950-ish kind of stuff, and the washrooms. The entrance to the washrooms for men and women, of course. The significant statement, the Garner Women's Club on Highway 70 has been the clubhouse for Garner's oldest active civic organization since 1957. Founded by local women in 1928, the club was part of a statewide and national trend of women's groups meeting to work toward community betterment, to pursue interests outside the domestic sphere, and to socialize. Members operated a community library off and on from 1931 through the 1960s, among other work. The building is historically significant in the areas of women's history and social history at the local level. I'm happy to say that as staff to the Wake County Historic Preservation Committee, we have recommended that the Garner Town Council designate the Garner Women's Club at 230 U.S. Highway 70 West, Garner, as a Garner Historic Landmark and adopt the associated ordinance. And at its meeting on July 11th, 2023, the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission unanimously recommended that the Garner Town Council designate the Garner Women's Club as a Garner Historic Landmark and adopt the associated ordinance. I'll say just in conclusion, just a couple of things. There are often, there's 2 benefits, let's say, of being a historic landmark. One of those is the honor and the recognition from your community that this building and what's happening here is important to everyone. The second, for many people, is a 50% property tax deferral. It should be clear this is a nonprofit organization that has asked to be designated, and they are not tax-paying entity, and there will be no 50% property tax. So there is no financial advantage in their case for making this application. Just the honor of the community respecting the building and what they do. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them on any subject of yours or that have come up elsewhere.
Yeah, if you'll just hold your spot there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Roth, and for that very thorough presentation. So I'm going to ask council at this point, since this is a public hearing, if anybody has a question for Mr. Roth, I'll start on my left with Mr. Matthews, if he has any.
Nothing, sir, and I've had the pleasure of knowing this gentleman for years, back when I was a Wake County Commissioner, and we did a lot of historical things. It's good to see him again, and a great presentation, and I'm looking forward to supporting this presentation.
Right.
And Mr. Singleton.
No specific questions. I can remember when the library was on Main Street. When it got moved to Main Street, where the existing building still is, and going there as a young boy before the town hall complex here opened in '72, and they had the library, well, wherever it was. And then, of course, that was built over then in the '80s. So I can remember going there when it had moved from this building back to Main Street many, many years ago. Sure do. No questions, though. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Behringer?
Hi. Wonderful presentation, very thorough. I can't imagine one even more thorough than that. I would like to also add that the Women's Club is presently in use as a meeting place for some other civic organizations and for some self-help organizations. We rent the clubhouse for a minimum of 4 days a week throughout the year, and then of course it's available for club activities and club member special events. So it is quite often is in use, and you'll see cars parked there a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dellinger?
Questions? Just thanks for the presentation, and I learned a lot. I thought I knew some things, but I learned even more.
Thank you. Probably more than you need to know.
No, absolutely not. And that's sort of the point. You know, as you grow, you have to make these conscious decisions on preserving your character and history. We don't have that many historical places in town, so this is kind of exciting. And, you know, you told the story, but it tells a story. You know, women were one of many oppressed and stifled classes, and we forget that. I remember I was walking in Cloverdale several years ago, and there's a woman, and I think she was in her 80s, and she was in her yard picking up sticks, and I said, you know, how long have you lived here? She's like, well, I lived here since the house was built. And I was like, oh, did you buy it new? And she's like, oh, I couldn't buy it new because they wouldn't give a woman a mortgage. I'm like, oh, times have changed. So this is great to kind of start those conversations. People say, what's that little building off the street? And it tells the story, so thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Vance?
Yes, thank you for the thorough briefing. Very interesting and informative. Question pertains to the clubhouse. Is for the designation, is it just for the clubhouse or is it for all the property?
It's for the entire property.
Entire property.
Because it's important to, setting is almost as important as the building, you know, so that you can have some kind of space around it so you can actually appreciate the building and see it there. And so it is the entire property.
And I saw the quick graphic of the historical district. How far is it from the historical district?
I think I said it was maybe a mile or so.
Mile.
A
Okay,
portion of a mile.
So it's a distance
Yeah.
from it. Okay.
Totally separate. Yep.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, and any follow-up from anybody? Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Roth. We'll see if there are other people who want to participate in this public hearing. But thank you for coming out this evening and
Sure.
for your presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would also like to recognize 5 of our club members sitting in the back. These ladies work tirelessly and very quietly to promote the missions of the Women's Club. So I would like to recognize Alicia Puckett, Caroline Davis, Gloria Parrish, Faye Marshburn, how about that, and Margaret Brenson.
Okay, nice to see you all and to have you here. Okay, are there folks out there? This is a public hearing, so we don't recognize anybody who wants to speak on this issue. So let us know if, or let me know at this point in time if you came with the idea of wanting to speak as relates to this public hearing. Are there any other persons? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Unless council has anything else, I'm going to formally close the public hearing, and a motion will be in order at this time, council.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 2023-521, designating the Garner Women's Club a local historic landmark within the town of Garner's corporate limits.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matthews. A motion probably made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Behringer. So, council, you have the matter before you at this time on the approval of the motion. If you approve the motion, then would you vote aye at this time?
Aye.
If there's opposition, vote no. And of course, there is none. So I congratulate the Garner's Women's Club for this important designation, and look forward to continuing to hear great things from the civic spirit of this club. And I'll recognize Ms. Behringer.
I want to just mention one interesting little story about the history of the library and the Women's Club. The story goes that back in 18-something or other, I first thought it was the 1880s, but it may have been back as far as 1868, there was a reading of Charles Dickens' poetry in New York City. And there was a lady who lived, I believe, in Illinois, who wanted to go hear him, and she traveled all that distance and to hear him read his poetry. And when she got there, she was not allowed in because she was a woman. And her remark was, "I'll fix that." And that was the birth of the Women's Club.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else care to make a comment, speak? Okay, did we vote?
We did, we've already voted.
Okay.
Disapproved.
Yeah. All right. So, unless anybody else has for the good of the cause, we will, I don't know if these ladies want to stick around for the rest of the meeting. It won't go on much longer, but at any rate, or Mr. Roth as far as that goes. But thank you all for being here and for helping us be introduced to this important topic. And this council has approved the request, so I commend them and commend all of you. So if you want to leave at this time, now would be a good time, but we got a little bit more business to take care of. Yep, okay. Just before we go to the, thank you, Mr. Roth, to the next item of business, I would like to recognize some scouts we have in the audience out here. Would you like to stand and tell us what troop you're with and your name, if you don't mind? Okay, thank you. We welcome you. Okay.
They've been active in Scouts for many years.
Good, yeah. Okay, I'm going to recognize under new and old business now Mr. Singleton, who reminded us earlier that there's an item that he wants to have council take action on, or at least discuss. So, Mr. Singleton, I recognize you this time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there was noted at our, wasn't it the last meeting, the work session, but the meeting in, the second meeting in, well, the only meeting in July other than the work session, asked that the item for a proposal out off of Highway 401 was going to be added to the August 22nd agenda. I sent some emails back. Mr. Triesenberg answered about, because before the last public hearing, which got pulled, they pulled it here, but there were numerous residents here. I believe Ms. Gibson may have had some of the residents upstairs. There were so many people here at one time, but many people left when they found out there wasn't a public hearing, and about, I don't know, a dozen of them came down here. So we knew that many residents in that area, particularly the Colonial Heights neighborhood, were interested in the public hearing. And I just wanted to make sure that, and Mr. Dickinson responded today with an email, that all those people got notice of the public hearing that were here before, and were given adequate time to come. Now, I know that was earlier this month, and August 22nd is about 3 weeks, but still, we meet by the law, as Ms. Jones and Mr. Dixon noted, between 10 days and 25 days. But did we want the to continue the public hearing on August 22nd, or do we need to make sure that all people who were registered, signed up, or who were, had to be notified of the previous public hearing were notified again of this upcoming public hearing? Because there are a lot of people over there who are concerned for the impact in their area, in their neighborhood. Because this is a big development. As I recall, it's 500 apartments, 300 single-family homes, and 45,000 square foot of business, retail, office, something other than residential.
You're so correct. I will entertain any comments from other council members regarding Mr. Singleton's comments and/or his questions here. Anything?
So what are you recommending, based upon what you just shared, that you want us to do or consider?
Just want to make sure that all the people who were notified the first time get notified the second time. And now, Ms. Jones noted they're doing under the old 160D plan, so they don't have, the burden of notification isn't on them, it's on the town. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. To my right, Ms. Behringer. Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, my only comment is, kind of, we've talked about this before, about public hearings and council being the one to set the public hearing. And in this instance, regardless of who said it, I guess the planning director under the UDO, old UDO can set it. We could have done it on the consent agenda at this meeting and still been well within the window and also had that added visibility to the public. I had multiple people reach out to me who were just very frustrated. And, you know, that's just, I think we can alleviate some of that if we kind of make sure there's a more public vote, even if it's on a consent agenda, for public hearings. So again, all the timing is right, but it's sort of like it could have waited a few more days and still been right, and actually probably gotten a little more notice out to the public through a council meeting. Because I had a couple email addresses that were lost for public hearing, and I haven't gotten one since November. I don't know if that's just me or if it's a systemic thing. But if it's happened to me, it may have happened to other people who then don't get that notice and it doesn't appear on our agenda. So if they're reading the agenda, they won't see it either. So still just have some procedural concerns that can be fairly easily
Okay. I do feel inclined to make one comment to Mr. Dellinger. It's my understanding that the staff has a tracking process that can confirm when notices are sent out and if and when the receiving party, in fact, in some way receives those. And it's my understanding that proper notices were sent and indications of receipt. I'm not sure what happened to yours, but at any rate, I'll recognize Mr. Vance at this time for any comments.
I have no comments.
Okay. So then, Ms. Jones, I guess a motion would be in order to, well, ask Mr. Singleton if he wants to go ahead and make a motion to the effect of his request. Right. Let me just state for the record, as things stand right now, this matter is scheduled for hearing on August the 22nd. Is that correct?
2 weeks from tonight.
Yes.
Okay. And so when we come to that meeting, if nothing else occurs, then at that meeting, if its council decided to and wanted to, it could, I guess, briefly open the hearing and request a continuance of the case to a date certain. Or is that correct?
Yes, you could do that, and there wouldn't have to be any further notice. However, because there's no guarantee of that vote,
Yeah.
the public, the applicant, everyone would be expected to come to find out when that new date is. So my suggestion was, if you did not want to hear it on the 22nd, decide that so that the mailing doesn't go out. The email and the public hearing notice can be rectified, but just to prevent confusion. But it's your prerogative as to when you want to hold the public hearing. But it is ready to go. The mailing the mailed notice could go out this week, and it would meet all of the requirements of state law and the town ordinance. But there was outreach to the people that we were aware of, the attorney that had represented several neighbors, and then other people that had contacted the planning department were notified, as soon as it was determined that August 22nd would be an available date for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Mr. Singleton, does that prompt you with anything?
I just, Mr. Matthews, Ms. Behringer, Mr. Vance didn't say much, so I don't know if they think it's a good idea or bad idea. I'll just bring it here
Yeah, okay.
because we know it's a highly tested issue with these residents. If we want to have them on the 22nd, that's fine. I'm not going to, I'm just bringing it up here to make sure they get notified adequately. And if we're within the window of the law, that's fine too. I'm just brought it up because of the fact that there can be a lot of people here. And Mr. Jones is right. We don't want to bring them here on the 22nd and say, whoops, guess what? We're going to move it to the second meeting in September. That's not the right thing to do. It's to decide now, either we're going to move forward on the 22nd or we're going to push it to another specified date.
Okay, thank you. So I'll ask other
Mayor,
council members.
only thing I would add too is I believe we did post the site this morning, so there was a sign out there with that date on it, so just,
The 22nd on
The
there.
22nd,
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
on the site.
we'd have to remove that and put something new. I'm just letting you know that
Sure.
we did post it. So,
Okay. You care to weigh in on this matter?
So would you refresh me on what we need to do to keep it on the 22nd to make sure everybody is notified? Do we have time to do that?
Yes. So the public hearing notice on the website has been posted. That gets pushed out to people who have signed up for an email alert. Notwithstanding Councilman Dellinger's issues, that appears to have happened, and we do have a report that went out, and at least some people have opened that email. The property was posted this morning before we received the emails, but the mail notice was to go out. So planning staff held on to that to see if council wanted to move it, to not have the expense of that mailing that might or might have to, be changed. So they were just, my understanding is staff is looking for direction. Should they proceed with the mailing tomorrow or this week and have the public hearing on the 22nd?
Okay.
So I guess what I was looking for is a motion and vote to make sure that there was consensus of council, which way you wanted to go. Have it on the 22nd or have it at a different date?
So if we postponed it to a different date, the purpose of that is to make sure that people are notified properly, or, I'm not clear about why we'd want to postpone it.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that there's people requesting that they need more time, but, that would be the only reason. But it appears from what we've looked at, notice has gone out properly, and the mailing would be the final step that has to happen.
Seems, for what it's worth, it seems to me like sticking to the original date would be less confusing for all concerned.
So you would favor the 22nd date that we have. Mr. Dellinger?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the date. It's, again, a process, and the whole purpose of getting that work session agenda with possible things that could come up is that so we are aware, and also the public is aware, in as many open forums as possible as to what is potentially coming. I don't have a problem with the date. It was a process concern that I have and feedback that I got. So I don't have a problem with the date.
Mr. Vance?
I have no problem with the date.
Okay.
So it looks like it'll move forward on the 22nd, and
Yep.
staff, tomorrow, whatever day they're going to get the notices out, the mail notices.
So given that, there's no need for a motion for a new date, and the date is already set. Okay?
I feel comfortable there's consensus of council that, because this happened with email, my suggestion was that, everybody be aware of what the concerns were, and that council was making a decision.
Okay. All right. Everybody?
And just
on the
one
same-
thing I would like
Yeah.
to say, appreciate the discussion on the topic. and bringing things back to our remembrance as to how sensitive this particular project is. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
It started, Ms. Jones sent us an email on the 27th of July stating that they had requested to get on the August 22nd, and that had, request came in after the work session agenda, so it wasn't showing that on the future date, and that's how that's just kind of started the ball rolling. Because I emailed back and forth, and Mr. Triesenberger told me about notices and so forth, and how the process was going, so you're right, Mr. Vance, good discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I don't have any other items under new and old business. Any other council members have anything? All right. Committee reports. I believe I would like to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Vance, who will give us some information on the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say that the HR committee has 2 recommendations for the Board of Adjustments. The 2 individuals are Mr. Ellis Williams and Mr. Willie Dupree. They both are currently on the alternate list for the Board of Adjustments, and now they're requested to be on the full board. So that is what we recommend, that we would like to have Mr. Ellis Williams and Mr. Willie Dupree fill the vacancies currently on the Board of Adjustments.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. And for those of you who may not know, Mr. Ellis is sitting right out there in the green striped shirt. I don't see the other gentleman here, I don't believe, right? So let's see, come from committee, does this require a second? I guess it does. So,
Motion, I'll second.
okay, thank you. So motion probably made and seconded. So you've heard the report from this committee. If you favor the report and the selection of these persons, would you vote aye?
Aye.
If you are opposed, no. Excuse me, and it is so ordered. Anything else from a committee? All right. Well, I guess, I could do this under council reports, but it's a committee. The Stevens Service Committee is in the process of receiving applications. I think the deadline for those submissions has been made, and that committee will be in the process of tabulating scores for those who have been selected, and will be meeting in the fairly near future to select the recipient for this year. Was there anything I left out, Ms. Gibson?
No, you covered it pretty well.
Okay, thanks. All right. I will then go to, and we'll come back to council reports, manager reports. Mr. Town Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, a couple of events to mention. The Town Players teen production of High School Musical Junior will be this week, August the 10th through the 12th at the Garner Performing Arts Center. And from Mr. Mercer, there's a lot of talented individuals, youngsters in those performances, and expect that this will be a great show. Next Friday, Family Flicks on the lawn of Garner Rec Center will be August 18th at 8:15 p.m. The movie is Super Mario Brothers. So just a couple of events there. And I wanted to bring up the planning director, Mr. Triesenberg, to give you an update on the Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan calendar and schedule of things to happen over the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you, sir. I recognize you, Mr. Triesenberg.
Yes, thank you. Good evening again. I had a chance to reach out to Matt and go over kind of hopefully what will be the remaining steps to get us to a possible adoption meeting, and have confirmed these kind of tentative dates. He hopes to have version 3 delivered to us internally tomorrow for our review, so that it can be posted to the project website on Monday the 14th. Promised Planning Commission that we would have a short courtesy review of the edits that have occurred between version 2 and version 3 at their meeting that night. Then understanding that there's a desire for the print versions again to be distributed and made available to target no later than August 22nd for that to happen. And then Matt will be here on August 29th at your work session to both present the cost of services study and to also then follow up with a final presentation to you on the comprehensive plan. Hopefully setting us up for a possible then adoption discussion on September 19th.
Okay.
So I hope that we kind of have addressed and built in the necessary steps, but if there's anything missing, please let me know and I'll be glad to get up with him tomorrow.
Questions or comments for Mr. Triesenberg? You've heard the timeframes that he has listed there. They seem reasonable to me, but what say you, council? Anything, Phil? Mr. Singleton?
I have a question. So the adoption, is that, I think last time you'd mentioned that there'd be a public hearing scheduled for that. Is that the plan for that?
So we've had the public hearing and then it's been to Planning Commission. And I think it's usually just a regular meeting item under new and old business.
I would propose that we do the adoption meeting as a public hearing. Feedback I've gotten from folks is, and I'm going to speak to this during council comments, is there's concern in the process of public hearing, whether it be a rezoning or text amendment, Planning Commission, where there can be significant and substantial changes, and then back to council, but not really another hearing for the public to digest and give feedback on what emerged from Planning Commission. So that's what my question was. 'Cause I think last time I may have misheard, and I think there was a combination of a public hearing for the text amendments, and I misheard that would be a public hearing for the adoption. That would be my recommendation on that. My sort of question is too, the last meeting we had was we were supposed to have had the version that had the Planning Commission's changes in it. Our work session was geared towards that and getting our feedback on that version. And then whatever feedback we had would be then potentially incorporated into another version. Because I have a lot of comments that I don't have a fresh version to look at. And so if I have that, the public as well will need time to get that August 22nd version and digest it. And again, there was some willingness for folks to have planning come out to communities and review it and highlight it and field questions. Again, it just goes back to the public having input on a drastically changed document at this point. So does that fit with the timeline, or when was your expectation to have council feedback on the third version that is coming out of Planning Commission?
In this vision, I think anytime between August 14th and that meeting. So it'd be about
a month.
Yeah, 4 or 5 weeks, right in there.
Okay.
So are you saying up until, say, the end of August or the 29th?
Yeah, I mean, even up until, and we can, Matt and I talked about this at the very beginning as to how we wanted to, necessarily track some of this, and he saw some advantages and disadvantages to different ways. We can always, I think, make a motion with to still be made, as long as they're spelled out and incorporated. So I think we could take, I feel like we could take comments all the way up until the final meeting. At that point, it just becomes a question of if there's anything else that needs to be edited, we just need to document that very specifically.
So, of course, I'm hearing Mr. Dellinger suggesting or recommending that, I guess that next hearing would be a public hearing. We have had the one public hearing, is that right? Or maybe more than one? One. So, I guess, Mr. Attorney, we could do another public hearing as part of the final approval.
Yes.
Yep.
You can do a public hearing, which we would then notice on the town website 10 to 25 days in advance of that meeting. because it's a town-wide comprehensive plan, it doesn't require the mailed notice to individuals, but it certainly can be put on the website, and then that will push out to anyone who's signed up to get the email alerts. Or you can have it on new and old and invite public comment. But I think if you notice it as a public hearing, then the public knows they have an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Another question, August,
Go
the
ahead.
29th work session, so that would sort of be what we were trying to do the last time.
Yeah, to get a whole, he'll be happy to go over any of the previous stuff that we went over, plus what I've given him from our meeting, this last meeting that we had.
If we have feedback on this version, should we get it to him before that work session, or are we going to go through it during that work session?
I think you can do either, whichever you're comfortable with. If you want to wait for his, kind of explanation of things, they'll still be, 3 weeks after that. Okay. But if you want to give beforehand too, it might actually help him prepare some information to share as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Council, any other questions for Mr. Triesenberg? So we're fairly well set in terms of the time.
Yes, and again, if it takes more, we can add more. That's
okay.
But just trying to get a timeline and frame for possible bringing this to conclusion.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Triesenberg. Okay, I want to recognize Attorney Jones for any report or reports she'd like to make at this time.
Well, I'm glad that the agenda was a little bit light, because I do have a lot to talk to you about tonight,
Okay.
both as reports and in closed session. I just last week attended the Municipal Attorney Summer Conference, which was very good, got to learn a lot. One of the topics that they highlighted were social districts, and I'm happy to report that Garner was highlighted as being one of the 45 jurisdictions that currently has a social district adopted and operating. Around the state, they have reported that there basically have been no reports of public intoxication, disorderly conduct associated with the social district. So it's been a successful experiment all around the state, and more jurisdictions are looking to add these in the future. So I did want to highlight that Garner was up on the screen with many of the other. But also at the conference, we typically receive our legislative update. Of course, the General Assembly is still technically in session, although it sounds like the budget's not getting adopted till possibly September. And in talking to the League of Municipalities legislative staff, I did talk specifically about Senate Bill 675, which was the ETJ expansion, and then House Bill 409, which had to do with accessory dwelling units. She indicated, now, of course, no guarantees because things can happen, but because both of those bills have gotten stuck in the Rules Committee in the other chamber, that they are not likely to go anywhere this year. However, because nothing's set in stone, if you do talk to senators or representatives, you can still mention that we are opposed to the accessory dwelling unit because Garner has a lot of older neighborhoods that aren't protected by covenants, so that should be left to a local choice. And then with the ETJ expansion, that again, Garner has gone through this Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan process and was intending to do an ETJ expansion. And for economic development purposes along 540, it would be beneficial for the town to have that authority. Now, I had drafted an amendment that would either allow Garner or would either allow the municipalities in Wake County, because I believe it was Rollsville and one other town were also in the process of getting ready to do an ETJ expansion, so that if the bill does, at least they could add that amendment to allow this authority. So if you happen to be talking to any of them, go ahead and keep that, because as the league stated, lots of these ideas come back around again, and the biggest fear is that somehow it gets weaved into the budget at the last minute, and we don't really have time to talk about that. But I wanted to give you those two updates. I also, and I'm happy to answer questions about either of those if you want now, or have one more totally separate from the conference update.
Just to, excuse me, a quick comment. I'm sure Mr. Sam Bridges is aware of what you've just said, and I'd love to have a follow-up with him just to make sure he's speaking on our behalf and is working in all manners in the meantime. I'm sure he is. I haven't talked to him recently.
He wasn't at the conference, and I haven't had the opportunity to talk to him, but that's on my list to talk to him and say, this is the message I heard from the league, but as things are happening, remember that Garner's very interested in these two particular bills.
Sure. Okay. Anything, Mr. Dickerson?
Yeah, we made him aware of those bills a few months ago, and I know there was a point in time where he was visiting the legislature regularly and relaying that, as well as some funding items that we had that we're hopefully going to get approved. So he has made that known.
Good. Okay. Continue.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, not for a decision tonight, but there were two items on the consent agenda. One was a Duke easement that has to do with the Pearl Street townhomes and the town's corresponding project to improve the street on Parker and Pearl Streets downtown. And then the other was this cleanup of an old issue with the Southeast Regional Library, where as part of that development and the police station development, the town had previously agreed to enter into this cross easement and parking easement with Wake County. They've asked for that. They, in fact, had asked for this about a year ago or so. It just didn't happen. They didn't present it to us, and we didn't. Well, actually, they had presented it to us, but we just didn't bring it forward, and they didn't ask for it. But now they're trying to clean things up. But these are two examples of not necessarily time-sensitive issues, but whether you're comfortable with delegating authority for these types of utility easements or cross-access easements to the manager. Both of these two particular issues have been to council for discussion about different projects, but these are two recent examples. I'd also like you to think about any other decisions that you want to delegate to the manager, or if council wants to retain the ability to do this. I can present some options to you at a future work session to see what some other jurisdictions do. Of course, it's your prerogative to delegate or not delegate. But it does help with sometimes the streamlining of getting things done when a particularly utility easements, when they find that they're not covered and something, they want to move quickly on something, getting it to the council agenda can sometimes take time.
Okay, council, what say you? I think it would, in many ways, expedite things, and understand we have a kind of interesting stuff going on over in Old Town right now with the work over there. So, at any rate, you've heard from the attorney. Anybody on council care to speak to the issue of delegating to the town manager on this matter?
I think it'd be helpful to see at a work session how that works, because I think dollar amount thresholds are kind of would be a concern, and
Right.
just how that's handled. I think that'd be helpful for us to have that discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a general sense of if this is something that you feel comfortable doing or want to explore. If it's not, then I don't want to go through the exercise of putting everything together.
Okay, I'm certainly hearing one voice in favor of it, and I believe probably.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Yes,
As well.
definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the library issue was discussed years ago. I mean, some time ago from the project, and when we approved the project on Pearl Street, and also the relocation of the train car, and also the library, the depot. we knew we had to relocate utilities, so this is no surprise, so.
Right.
Yeah, I have no trouble with that. Mr. Dillinger mentioned about a dollar threshold sign.
Okay.
Thank you. So that would conclude my reports. Do have items to discuss with you in closed session this evening
Okay.
at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Any questions for the attorney from anybody? Otherwise, okay. Thank you very much, and hope you had a session and you took care of your duties while you were there, right?
Yes. So, yes, my term on the board of directors, my 2-year term was up, and because I'm the chair of the government and public sector section for the North Carolina Bar Association this year, I asked them not to put me on another leadership role this year so that I can focus on that role.
Very good. Thank you for continuing to serve. Excuse me. Okay, council reports. I'll start with Ms. Behringer tonight.
Just a couple things. As I was coming into the to town hall this evening, I noticed that there's a tree that apparently was broken during the storm down Aversboro Road near the intersection with Vandora Avenue, and so it's right close to the road. So I hope that hopefully we can get that removed quickly, and it's also near the intersection of Vandora and Aversboro, where there's just a lot of grass and debris around the corner there, and it would be good to have that mowed, cleaned up, made look better. I know that the homeowner or the property owner, that's their responsibility, but I'm not sure they understand that.
Ms. Manager, quick update on that last part of that. The notice period expired today, so that will be abated unless it was mowed this afternoon.
Okay.
It'll be abated and charged back.
Grab the tree while you're at it. Okay. And just one more quick thing. We were talking about the Women's Club earlier. Another thing that the club has done in this town over the years is to facilitate the installation of the crepe myrtles on the railroad right away. So when you ride down Garner Road and it looks so beautiful in the spring, it was a project that was instigated by the Women's Club. That's all, sir.
All right, thank you. I'll go to Mr. Singleton.
Yes, a couple of questions. One, I know we did the resurfacing contract. As I recall, the traffic calming that will be done on Pool Drive and on Main Street is tied to that contract. Is that correct? Sure. Okay, so what is the schedule? Because some people who lived at Pool Drive contacted me on Sunday and said, what's the scoop on the traffic calming? I said, we're voting on the contract this week, and I'll find out, because they just want to be notified so they're aware of what's happening.
And so Ms. Harrison's going to give an update, but we are working on a communication that will be mailed out to both of the affected neighborhoods, and I'll let her elaborate on that and anything else about the schedule.
Yeah, so we're working on a notification to go out, probably a postcard for both of the neighborhoods. We have that drafted. We have the pre-con meeting with the contractor scheduled for next week now that the bid is approved to award. So then that'll give us the chance to start talking schedule with them now that we can sign the contracts. So we're anticipating notice to proceed by the end of the month. And I have mentioned to the contractor, and we will request again that they try to do the traffic calming pieces as close to the front of the contract as possible. So we'll get an idea of his timing and when that can be available. And once we have a little bit better timeline, then we'll finalize the mailings and send those out.
That should be sometime this calendar year.
It should, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that contract should be finishing up about the end of the year. So it should be done sometime this calendar year.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, I had noticed there were some, the disease signs were showing back up on that Timber Drive near the townhouse project behind the high school that had been approved some time back, and also one at Spring Drive. Contacted Mr. Triesenberg, and he said that was related to the Board of Adjustment on a height of a fence, and that had already been taking place. So it wasn't, they're not coming back for another rezoning. That's what I was wondering. That was related to the Board of Adjustment. If you see those signs out there, the signs will be getting picked up shortly. So I appreciate the information and the response back. That's all for right now.
Okay, thank you. I'll go back to my right to Mr. Dellinger.
Yeah, a resident in Cane Creek asked who's responsible for trees overhanging the street in the neighborhood. They've overgrown in some places, and delivery trucks are hitting them and I guess damaging the trucks, but also the trees. Now, I didn't know who's responsible. Is the property owner responsible, or is the town responsible for trees that are over the road?
We'll take a look at it. Some of it may depend on where the trunk originates, and how far in the right of way, but we'll have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Without seeing it, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't have a specific address, but it was Cane Creek.
Cane Creek, okay.
Drive. And the other one is, I've brought this up previously, and I know Mr. Singleton and I both have, on updating our zoning signs to have a little more information on them, dates and zoning case numbers, QR code to get to more information. I can send pictures of Raleighs. They're very concise. They've got that information on them. They have different ones for rezonings, tenant notification. And I want to know what kind of the status of us being able to do that. Is it a budget issue?
I'll have to defer that to planning director, see if we got cleared.
Yeah, so we had been working on a larger sign, but we had to wait for the budget year to flip before we could order more of those. But if we want to add other stuff, we can still do that. We have not sent it yet for production.
What's slated to be on the larger sign?
From the last time we had talked, it was just to make them bigger so that they were more visible, and the language that was on there, the phone number and the website, would be bigger and more readable to folks.
I'll send you Raleighs, and I'll send them to council. They're just helpful because they reference a zoning case number. They have a specific date if there's going to be a hearing, so you can drive by. You don't have to call a number, go to the website. There's a date on there, so you kind of know just by driving by you can get the information. So
I'll reach out to them because I think what I have heard that they do is they have some kind of on-demand printing contract. Because one of the problems that we had with signs in the past was we were doing that, but the removing and adding was causing the signs to deteriorate more quickly. I think what they do is they actually have, and I think they have something maybe even in their fee schedule, where they require the applicant to pay for them and post them, and I think they have a contract with somebody because they come pre-printed with that information. It's not info that Raleigh staff are adding.
Okay. I'll send the pictures I took because I think some of them have a removable element to them.
They got like different letters for the type.
I'll send that information. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go back to Mr. Matthews.
With the storms we had come through last night, I know a lot of people had power issues. Mine came back on about 5 this morning, so I was in the wrong grid, obviously. But I want to thank the police, fire, and rescue, as well as Public Works and all those involved that jumped right in on it this morning and last night, as a matter of fact. I know Public Works was helping, I think, the fire department and some things, and it didn't go unnoticed. So we'll give them some accolades for a job well done and getting our town back in running order. So good job to all of our staff and departments out there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vance.
Yes, just one thing. On May 31st, we had coffee at Lorraine's with the mayor, Congressman Nickel, and it was a very informative event. We had a great turnout, I would say. And a number of questions were asked by citizens, and even after the event was over, stayed there for about an hour and a half talking with the citizens about various questions and things of that nature. And I was asked a question by several of the citizens as to when this will happen again, where they'll be able to come in and voice their concerns in an informal manner.
Very good, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vance. Okay, I believe that covers everybody. I would just make note of the item that's at your desk tonight, members. I think it's the latest edition of Garner Parks Recreation Cultural Resources. Always a well put together magazine, and I'm sure this version is as well. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I want to thank the Parks and Recreation Department for their good work in doing this. So hopefully if they're not listening, we'll get the word to them, sure enough.
And Mayor, if I may add to that, what you have before you is their annual report. So it's full of all sorts of information and highlights of the great work that the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department has been involved in over the last year. And so it's a great resource to kind of celebrate where we've been, and also gives us some highlights as to where we're going regarding parks and recreation here in the town. So I encourage the council to take a look at the report and enjoy it. The report's also available on the town's website for residents to also be able to read.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And I was going to note, hopefully we have a goodly number of copies. I think our HOA likes to have one of these to include in a welcome packet if somebody new moves in our neighborhood. And they usually appreciate getting that information for sure. Okay, that covers all of our council reports tonight. So we are scheduled for a closed session. So I'll recognize our attorney if she wants to give us a cite on that, or if a council member wants to do that.
So the closed session requested is to consult with the town attorney regarding litigation. That's North Carolina General Statutes, Section 143-318.11A3.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion properly moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion to go into closed session, would you vote aye?
Aye.
If there's opposition, there is none. So I guess we'll talk to Rick, but we could just remain in here. Is that correct? Would you rather go
to the town attorney concerning the handling of judicial actions and other administrative procedures regarding 3 enforcement actions that the staff and town attorney would like to take. And with that, I have recommended that town council adopt resolution number 2023-2541, which would authorize the town attorney or outside counsel selected by the town attorney to be authorized and directed to initiate such proceedings as necessary to effectuate the enforcement of town ordinances, abatement of Chapter 19 nuisances, and to collect civil penalties and other debts owed to the town.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, questions of the attorney? Hearing none, I will ask you to vote then on this numbered item. I've got 2023-2541, was that the correct site? Okay. All right, if you favor the motion, would you vote aye?
Aye.
If you oppose, no. And it is a unanimous vote, Mr. Attorney, so.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. By my calculation, we have completed all the items on our agenda, unless somebody else has got something urgent for the good of the group. I'll entertain a motion of adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion properly made and seconded. All in favor of the adjournment motion, would you vote aye?
Aye.
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 Opposition, I declare this meeting of the Garner Town Council to be completed. We'll at our next meeting.